Howdy there folks, it's Hunter, and in today's video we're going to be talking about draw speed enhancing perks on bows, specifically Archer's Tempo and Archer's Gambit. And we're going to be talking about whether or not you actually need these perks. Now, this discussion is going to be pointed at the people who want the kills on their bow. Those of us out there that are bow mains that want to just use the bow as our primary and actually kill people with it without hot swapping to something else or firing off ability for the cleanup, whatever the case may be. This is pointed at y'all. For you people out there that are still swapping with a glaive, a hand cannon, abilities, whatever, totally viable strategy. Bungie didn't get rid of it, did they? So for those of you, this does not apply to you. Keep on keeping on. You guys are the only remaining aggro build. It's just unfortunate that you can't be a true bow build anymore. Anyways, I digress. For those of you that want the kills on your bow, we're going to be talking about whether or not you actually need Archer's Gambit or Archer's Tempo. Now, there's a new bow that's going to be coming out soon with the Solstice event. We don't know the exact name of it yet. I think I saw some theories at it, or maybe possibly some data mine stuff. I don't have anything concrete on the actual name, so I'm not going to post that out there. But what we do know is that it's going to be a void lightweight bow, and it's going to have both Archer's Gambit and Archer's Tempo, similar to how we just got on Hush. But of course, it's going to be a lightweight, so it's going to be even faster than Hush by about 76 milliseconds at max. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but depending on how Bungie does their math. Now, I don't know if it's additive or multiplicative or how it works, but it's possible that this new bow will have a TTK as low as 0.675. It could also be like 0.75. It really just depends on the math there. I don't know how it works, and it's very difficult to test with just the way that Destiny is and the frames and all that good stuff. But what I want to kind of get into you guys' heads here, and I know there's some people out there that are immediately going to try to correct me on this. They're going to say, oh, well, you can just half draw. And then your TTK is like 0.6 basically. Well, that may be true, but no matter what, you always have to deal with the reload. Even if you have the maximum reload, which is at 80, you're still going to have the arrow reload delay as well as the actual reload animation itself, and that caps out at 0.6. We are the only primary in the game where our TTK is affected by our reload. And that's why I want to kind of steer you guys towards not thinking about the TTK of the bow anymore, because it just doesn't freaking matter. And I'll tell you why. Let's just say that you had a draw speed of 0, which at that point would mean you only have the reload, and let's say you have max reload. Well, now you're at a 0.6. Okay, well that's very competitive, of course. Even at a 0.675, that's still pretty darn competitive. And I'm not saying that this new bow isn't going to be just fast enough to be able to compete. I think it's going to be better at Hush and have a better shot than Hush with actually competing with meta TTK, fast TTK weapons. But keep in mind that some of those have, kill perks get rolling and they go much lower than 6. I don't know what all the values are, but I know that some of them are capable of killing around like 0.3 to 0.5, depending on what the weapon is and depending on the perk. And of course, in a team shot scenario, you step out into the open and you're trying to TTK with a bow, well, you're just going to get bursted down by other weapons that point, click, and shoot. And that's another thing. Other primaries point, click, shoot. That's it. For bows, you got to manage your draw. Let's say that whether you are or are not wearing Oathkeepers, but let's just say, for fairness, you're on another class that's not a hunter, or you're just a hunter that's not wearing Oathkeepers. You don't have infinite draw, so you have to pre-draw, and you don't exactly know when somebody's going to step around the corner, or maybe they've ducked back in cover, whatever the case may be. Well, now you've got to start draw canceling. So you've got your pre-draw to manage, and then you've got your draw canceling. Well, now you're having to also proc Archer's Gambit and Archer's Tempo. In order to proc both of those, and in order to do it effectively, regardless of whether you're on controller or mouse and keyboard, the best way to do it is the method that I explained in a previous video. You need to do what I call aim canceling. So you're going to aim at somebody. So you've got to do your pre-draw, draw cancel if you have to. Then let's say you see somebody, aim at them, put the dot on their head, and then you've got to let go of your aim just a split second before you actually let go of the arrow. That way you get as much accuracy as possible, the arrow goes where you want it to, and it's going to proc Archer's Gambit and Archer's Tempo. Then you need to immediately redraw, relock onto the head, and hit them in the head again. You've got to have 100% accuracy. You have to deal with your pre-draw. You have to deal with draw canceling. You have to deal with trying to aim cancel in order to get the perks to proc. So you see what I'm getting at here. You've got a bunch of different little things that are going to stack together that the other weapons don't have to do. They're just going to point, click, and shoot. And there's no guarantee that you're going to be perfect with that. I'm certainly not perfect 100% of the time, and I main the crap out of bows. But let's say somebody steps around the corner, and you're right in the middle of a draw cancel. And even if you're really, really good at draw canceling, it's pretty darn quick, but that fraction of a second puts you off by just a hair. And it's one additional thing that you're having to manage, having to think about. Even if it gets autonomous, you get good at just kind of doing it without really trying, you still got to think about it. and then all of a sudden they get the first shot off, well, you're dead. You're probably not going to beat them at that point. So here's what I would suggest. I would suggest not giving a crap about Archer's Tempo, Archer's Gambit. You want to get your base draw speed up, I think, still pretty decently. So you want Elastic String, just, draw time, masterwork, base perks that will still get you as high as you can go. But after that, don't worry about trying to proc these perks. I mean, yeah, you still got to get all headshots. So if there's not a better perk in slot or something that interests you more, by all means, just go for something like Archer's Gambit or Archer's Tempo. I would say probably more so Archer's Tempo just because it's a little bit easier to use. But I am here to tell you that you do not need Archer's Tempo. You do not need Archer's Gambit. You can get a little bit more creative. You can run other bows. You can feel free to use other bows that don't have any of these draw speed enhancing perks. Use exotics that are never going to have those. I main Tikus. Now granted, Tikus is a little bit different because I essentially get my first shot for free because that hipfire tracks. But I still, I just kind of tickle them with that, and I also put out a big warning flag like, hey, I'm going to blow you up. And then whether or not people, they can duck and hide, whatever, I'm warning them before I go for that. So Tikus has its own drawbacks, of course. That being said, I do pretty darn well with it. I get plenty of games that are 2.0 and higher, 5.0s, whatever, decent KDs. I've gone flawless with it fairly easily, but I don't have Archer's Tempo. I don't have Archer's Gambit. I don't really have anything. Now, Tikus has a decent base draw speed, of course, at around 580. I don't have to rely on trying to overthink, oh, can I out TTK this, or do I need to manage this or manage? I just play with the bow, and of course I draw cancel. I still have to land my perfect drawn headshot on the second shot in order to get the kill. Now, other bows you don't have to do that. If you want to use a legendary bow, regardless of what legendary bow you use, you don't really have to worry about perfect draws. You just need to land 2 headshots. But what I want to tell you guys is focus on the peak shot. Focus on going back to what bows were in the beginning, because in the beginning of their inception, when they first came out around Forsaken, everybody immediately could tell that bows were super slow and they were used as peak shot weapons. We didn't really get into, some people were double bodying, and of course you could double body melee. You could get a little aggro with them. And, as things evolved over time, we got a lot more of these aggro builds, but that was because there was this forgiveness. And that's what a lot of other weapons have that we don't have, because you go and you think, oh, well, TTK doesn't always matter. Why do you keep talking about TTK? There's other weapons that do really well in CQC or aggro situations, and they don't, they've got like a 0.8. Yeah, but they've also got forgiveness. If you look at an auto rifle that's got a TTK of 0.8 whatever, it doesn't matter that it's not as fast as a 0.67. They can run in and they can kind of spray and pray. They don't have to have 100% headshots, and even if they do miss some of their shots, their lesser TTK or their missed TTK, whatever you want to call it, is still going to be really good because it's a fast firing weapon. If you're shooting a bow and you miss that headshot, you're screwed. You might as well just go ahead and go back into cover and peek from another angle, re-engage, find another angle to come from, because missing a shot with a bow is more detrimental than ever. And that's the other thing. When you're trying to manage all those things and trying to match a 0.6 whatever TTK and land Archer's Gambit and do all that other stuff, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So, and I'm not saying you can't still use those perks and still have that fast thing in your pocket and then think, think of it more of as a backup, because, somebody's pushing me, so there's a chance I might be able to surprise them and punish them by using these fast perks and by just suddenly killing them. That's still something you could employ. But I also kind of want to free you guys from the shackles of thinking that you have to use those perks. Go back to the peak style. And I know this is sort of a long rant and I'm all over the place here, but the point I want to make is feel free to use whatever bow you want. Feel free to go back to that. Just peek. Bows are meant to be peak shot weapons. That's what Bungie wants them to be. I would not be surprised if at some point they go, well, Archer's Gambit still gives a little bit too much draw speed. Let's drop it down to like 40. Well, 40% is still better than the 25 from Archer's Tempo, so there's still a reason to use it. But all of a sudden, that's a massive decrease, and then there's no way we're hitting those TTKs that we think we're going to be able to hit. So use whatever bow you want. Don't feel inclined to use those kind of perks. Play the bow the way that it's meant to be played. If you want to get the kills on the bows, you need to get really good at positioning. You need to get really good at utilizing cover, and you need to get really good at your peak shots. And think of it this way. Your TTK doesn't matter if you choose your TTK. If you choose when to peek, you choose where to peek, you can slide out when you peek, you can jump, double jump, little hop, whatever the case. There's all kind of movement techniques to throw people off. You're choosing when to peek, you're choosing the TTK. their faster TTK completely goes out the window and does not matter because you are utilizing your cover and you're throwing off their rhythm because they're just running around going bang, bang, bang with their hand cannon using the same rhythm they always do. You throw that off, and that's why people don't like bows. It's one aspect of them that people have always hated, among other things, of course. But you can still be strong and you can still use the bow, just the bow. You just need to use them as they were intended. I really truly think that this is what Bungie wanted. They wanted them to go back to being more of a peak-oriented weapon. I think that's what they've always wanted, and initially, that's exactly what they were. It's just that over time, we've developed these other techniques. They became a little easier to use. More people were able to throw off more combos and be a lot more aggro with them, and people didn't like that. You know, they already hated the way that bows threw off their rhythm, so you add in all this other stuff they can do and it becomes so versatile and blah blah blah. The list goes on. Were they over-nerfed? Of course, but it doesn't matter. This is where we are now. And you know, I don't want to bring more doom and gloom. I think I've complained enough about the state of bows, but I just wanted you guys to not feel pressured into using Hush or using whatever this new bow is just because I'm making videos on it and talking about them. They're not the greatest thing ever, and they're not going to immediately be the best bows of all time. I think they're going to have a good solid competition or be good contenders to be the best legendary bows for sure, but that doesn't mean they have to be your best legendary bow. Use whichever one you are most comfortable with or whatever feels good to you. For me, Tyrion of Heaven feels awesome. It's one of my favorite lightweights, and it's not necessarily the best one, but it just feels good to use. So I would say pick something that feels good to use, something that you're comfortable with, and don't worry about TTKs or trying to be super fast with them. Just play them as they're meant to. Play your cover, master the peak shot, and play them as they were intended. And I think you guys will be a little bit more successful. And it allows you to control the battlefield a little bit better and to sort of bring people into your web, so to speak. Like, pretend like you're hunting them and that you want to try to get the advantage on those as best you can. And I talked about this a little bit in a previous video, but it allows you to control the battlefield and not feel so obligated to try to play super aggro like you've seen some others promote in the past. And that's not to say you can't still get some flashy aggro play. You guys have certainly seen me do some silly things like, you know, flying in with Mountaintop and then getting aerial shots with Tikus and stuff like that. But I mean, that's just for fun. Don't feel obligated to try to be aggro. Don't follow that playstyle. It doesn't really exist anymore unless you're doing bow cleanups or bow swaps, and I'm not here to promote that. If you're here to try to get some kills on your bows and just get kills on just your bow, for it to be your primary, for you to rack up the kill counter on your bow, I'm the guy to tell you how to do it. I feel like I know what I'm talking about. I have banged my head against this wall long enough trying to be as successful as I can with just the bow. So I'm just trying to help you guys out and give you a few tips on this. And I've ranted on this long enough, but short version of this, you don't need Archer's Tempo. You don't need Archer's Gambit. Play the bow you like, play your cover, and just enjoy it. I hope you guys found this incredibly long rant helpful. I hope you can dig some of the insight out in there with all of my redneck ramblings. But either way, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and thank you for watching.